Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastvandakaro Vai Rukarastvanivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Bhadram Karnebhih Shunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraah Sthirairangaistuštuvagum sastanubhih Vashema Devahitan Yadayuh Swasti na Indro Vriddhishravah Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedah Swasti nastarksho arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So verse 1. Om Atha Ashvalayano Bhagavantam Parameshtinam Upasametya Uvacha Adhihi Bhagavo Brahma Vidyam Varishtam Sada Sadbhihi Sevyamana Nam Nigudham Yaya Chirat Sarva Papam Vyapohya Parat Param Purusham Yati Vidwan. So, in the last class, in the explanation of this first verse, and also looking at the text that Swami Viditatmananda had given for this verse, we were looking at the importance of eligibility. So we'll just quickly revise that and then move ahead. So, in any endeavor in life, and eligibility is necessary. So, a child is not expected to be as eligible for most things as an adult is, not capable of. So similarly, if you are applying to join the armed forces, then they have a certain set of requirements that you need to have, which means strength of the body, good health, because you're going to be put into some situations where you have to carry a lot of weight. I'm really amazed how people can carry so much weight. And so the muscles have to be there, the strength has to be there, eligibility. So similarly, when you are studying something, then the eligibility is important. In fact, the eligibility is most important in the subject matter of knowledge, because knowledge depends upon your adequacy of understanding. And if you don't have the right background, you cannot understand it. The same vakya, the same sentence to a given person will be different from others. Swami Dayananji used to joke about it. He says, supposing you have these adult jokes. So the adult jokes, you need to be an adult. And you should understand about sexuality and some of the peculiar situations that come up between the genders and so on, in order to really understand an adult joke. That's why, supposing there are very young kids, like 4 or 5 or something. You can give adult jokes because they won't get it anyway. It doesn't matter. So it's quite safe to talk in front of them. But supposing you have a teenager, then things are different, because then they'll say, what did you mean by that? Because they have some background, maybe not adequate yet, but enough to get into trouble. And so eligibility is really, this is what I'm saying, it's important. So in the case of Vedanta, what eligibility do you need? This is what we were reviewing in the last class, so I'll summarize that. What is said is, in Vedanta, you need maturity. Maturity? What do you mean by maturity? How do you define maturity? What is, we have physical maturity, but what about this maturity that you talk about? So this is what we defined. So here we said, maturity doesn't mean the eligibility for understanding Vedanta. I think eligibility to even start the study of Vedanta, leave aside the completion of it, that's a different thing. But just to even engage to begin with, we should understand what's not eligible. It has nothing to do with gender, nothing to do with ethnicity, nothing to do with age up to a point. You can really have teenagers understand Vedanta. And we've had so many examples of that, where very young kids from their previous life, it's not as though it's an exception to the rule. There's no exception to the rule. The rule is that you must have completed a certain maturity. That maturity might have happened in the previous life. And yes, you just don't have the language and hands and so on. You cannot walk yet. That's okay. But as soon as your mind is developed, then all of the maturity from the previous life comes to the surface. So up to a point, even age is not important, and certainly not accomplishments. How powerful you are, what have you accomplished, how much money you've made, what position you hold in the society. All of that is really immaterial to the eligibility of Vedanta. But what is important is maturity. And what we find is that just having intelligence is not enough. You find that many people who are very intellectually sharp don't get this. Don't get the knowledge of Vedanta. People, I come across people. I have stopped actually talking about Vedanta to any of the people. But at one time I was anxious, and I found that it was just useless. They are otherwise very sharp. They can argue anything. But when it comes to this knowledge, they don't get it. And so sharpness is not maturity. Then what is maturity? So we saw that in the last class. We said that a mature person is the one. So this is where the difference is between intelligence and wisdom. An intelligent person may not be wise, and a non-intelligent person has possibility of being wise, but preferably it will be better if you are intelligent as a preparation for wisdom. So what is that wisdom? What is that maturity? So we looked into that Vedanta actually defines it clearly, comprehensively. That is what is encapsulated in sadhana chatushtaya. The fourfold sadhana, that one that has some idea for, is eligible. Doesn't have to be, so the sadhana chatushtaya doesn't have to be fructified completely when you begin the study of Vedanta. But you should have enough of it to make you at least starting to be eligible. It's kind of like, going to the high schoolers may not be able to understand the subtlety of quantum mechanics, but if you go to college, then you can actually build up your eligibility for understanding some very subtle aspects of physics. Yes, that you can do. So the sadhana chatushtaya doesn't mean that you are fructified, but you must have elements of that in your life. If you don't have it, then just lead a simple life and just enjoy, and maybe next life, who knows. But the maturity is clearly and comprehensively defined as sadhana chatushtaya: viveka, vairagya, shamadhi shatka sampatti, and mumukshutvam. So viveka means you should have the ability, a subtle ability, but an ability to distinguish between changing and the non-changing. And then with the help of the Shastra advising you, you should begin to see that your own life has two components. One is non-changing, one is changing. And with the help of examples, you should be able to see what the implications of this are, changing versus non-changing. Where are you in the process? And can you now put that into practice? This is what is vairagya. You say, no, I understand that the changing is really just a cover and it doesn't really mean anything, and so on. I understand that. Okay, fine, good. But then you blow your own cover by being extremely interested in the changing and not interested in the non-changing. Then I think you have to go back to the drawing board and go back to Viveka again. So really the test of Viveka is Vairagya. If one doesn't have the Vairagya, that means the Viveka is not clear. Anyway, so that, and then all the sixfold wealth. Sampatti means wealth. Shama, control of the mind. Dhamma, control of your organs of action. Uparati, calming things down, just staying within yourself. Titiksha, and the ability to withstand problems. It's like, when you have a storm brewing, you let the storm go. Don't do anything about it. Don't just get all upset and so on and so forth. The storm is going to go. So life's problems are going to come and they're going to go. And you just stand apart from it and withstand it. It's called titiksha. Shraddha. Shraddha means if you do the viveka properly, the implications of viveka are enormous. And you should have enough ability to, so this is what is called verifiable belief versus non-verifiable belief. Non-verifiable belief means you just accept it and don't question it because it will come later. Whereas Vedanta is verifiable belief. Exactly like the quantum mechanics, that means that it is there but I don't understand it. At some point I will understand it. It can be verified. Shraddha. And then Samadhanam. We'll talk about that maybe some other time. And then finally Mumukshutva. Mumukshutva means, as we saw, that it should grab me enough, the whole thing about the teaching and so on and so forth, it must grab me enough for me to become engaged with it seriously. Otherwise it it's not truthful to me. And so the message is very powerful, but I also have to be ready for it. The example typically given in Vedanta is that Agni, fire, so there are various important devatas in the whole creation, and one of them is Agni. Agni means heat, fire. Nothing is possible without fire. Life is not possible without heat. No way. If it is deep, even the conception will not take place unless there is heat. And so fire is everywhere. In fact, this is the thing. There are several devatas, and fire is one of them, who have the ability to be unchanging throughout the creation. Like, for example, supposing you have a president, Trump. He may be very powerful, but only for a short time. Dictator like Hitler may be very powerful, very damaging to people, short time. So Agni is not short time. It is there earned as the ability to burn anything, always, everywhere. You look at the fires, oh my God, just amazing. So now, supposing you have a piece of wood, so you can say, Agni should be able to burn it. Not necessarily. Why not? Because the wood is very wet. It's got so much water in it. So, can you say there is no Agni inside of it? No. The Agni is there. Fire is there in the wood. Everything is burnable. But it has to have the right condition. Eligibility. The wood must be dry. So similarly, in the case of the eligibility for Vedanta, one must have wisdom. If you don't have wisdom, Vedanta will not be useful for you. It will not work. Not that it's not true. It's always true like Agni. But if you become eligible, then you are done. You get it. You get the immortality that is inherent in you. All right, so that's the thing that we just said, that if you don't have this wisdom, don't have this maturity, then it just is academic. Sounds interesting, there is identity between Jiva and Ishvara and all that. Yeah, it sounds kind of interesting, good. But it doesn't really mean anything for me. It's just all bookish, as we saw earlier. So eligibility means that if you are mature, then your life can change. It affects you in a very real manner. Anyway, so we went through this quite a bit, so I wanted to just revise that. Then Vedanta says, as this verse also says, that so from an eligibility standpoint, we talked about this student called Ashvalayana, who was eligible. Who is eligible? And went to Brahmaji, the very father of the whole creation. And that's the example given, that he was a very learned man, but he didn't have the clarity of this. Another very beautiful example of this, if I can just spend a minute on that, is that of the rishi called Narada. Narada is very famous in the lexicon of the Hindu religion as being a remarkable person, because he has the ability to be both on Bhuloka, which is the one we are in, which is the human existence, and also Swargaloka, in the heavens. He could go back and forth. He had that much knowledge, that much punya. Very learned person. So the story goes that he approached Sanat Kumara, who's one of the very initial creation of human beings, the four Sanat Kumaras. So he approached the four Kumaras, and he approached one of the four Kumaras called Sanat Kumara, who was a Brahmanishta. He was understood the whole thing. So Sanat Kumara welcomed him. He says, Narada, so wonderful to see you. How are you? What's been happening? He said, sir, I need your help. He says, you need my help? Why? He said, sir, I have studied a lot and I have become a big scholar in so many different things, but I'm not happy. He says, really? What's the issue? What's the problem? He says, can you tell me what all the things that you learned? This is all given in the, I believe in the Chandogya Upanishad. So Narada reels off all the things that he knows. You know, we call this a Renaissance person, Renaissance man. This is a super Renaissance man. You look at any discipline, languages, mathematics, grammar, all those things, medicine. He knew all about it. Expert in all of that. He had spent a lifetime really learning it. So he says, well, that's very impressive, wonderful. There are not too many people like that. In fact, there's no one who would like you. Now what's the issue? He says, I am not happy. I know a lot, and it gives me some satisfaction, but inherently I'm still missing something. And I understand you are the one who can make me inherently happy. I'm come to you. And so then there's a dialogue between Sanat Kumara and Narada. So very similarly to that, this is a very accomplished person, but he was missing some pieces, some things that about himself that he could not quite clarify. So he went to Brahmaji and says, may I please learn this from you? And so this is the one aspect of this is the eligibility. Now let's go to the second aspect of this Vedanta, which is, why does he have to go to a guru? Why do you have to go to a teacher? In the modern days, you can, there are so many books available. So many people. So you can go to, you can just Google it about Vedanta, and you can even just, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what do people say about self-knowledge, about, it doesn't have to be called Vedanta. You can talk about happiness, adequacy, completeness, all of those kinds of things. You can Google it. You will get so much material you will not believe. And in the old days, you could go to, we used to have I think we still do, there is a bookshop here. In those are the days, bookshops were the most important ones. Googling it was not there yet. So you could go to this shop called East West in Mountain View that had all of these books on Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, alternative religions, and so on. You can just pick out a lot of the books. Then you have bestsellers from New York Times, New Age gurus that all come up, Deepak Chopra on Channel 9, and all kinds of stuff. Why can't I just listen to them? Why do I have to go to a guru? This is the question. Because it says that a very eligible person went to a guru. Why? And this also, we have the same attitude. And this is the attitude that we need to be cognizant of. And that attitude is, I'm a smart person. I know what I'm doing. And yes, I do need some help here and there, but I think I can figure it out. And there are several books available and so on. I don't need to go to a guru. Why do I have to go to a guru? And I don't know who the right guru is anyway. I have no idea. Vedanta says, please, get off of that high horse and really approach a person with humility. You cannot go to a guru and says, hey, I have been told that you know a lot, and I think you are the person for me, and I want you to teach this, and I'm willing to pay any amount of money. No, not going to happen. First of all, if he is a real guru, he will not accept any money. He will not accept you as a student actually. He'll say, well, I'm kind of busy these days, and he will say no. So you have to approach a guru with a humility. Why? So there are lots of reasons given, and probably one of the first things to see is this has never happened without a guru. That should be evidence enough that Brahma Vidya is not possible without a live guru. So you say, well, that's not a very important reason, because there's always a first time. So far it hasn't happened, but I can make it happen. Don't try it. You're wasting your time. Anyway, those are different reasons. Probably the most important reason is that in all of my endeavors, in all of my actions in life, they are centered on the truth of myself as a person. I have a certain, so here I'm mixing person and personality. I'm mixing those two together. A person with a personality. A human being, let's just say a human being. So everything that I do in my life is based on me as a human being. So even if I were to read books or to listen to a talk or research this, go to Google this and do this and all that. The reality of the human being is not disturbed. Because I cannot do any of that without the ability of me to be a human being. It's very obvious, without saying. So implications of this are that I am not to be messed with. I am whatever I am, I am. I have faults, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But whatever it is, that I have a certain uniqueness about myself. This is me. Now, all I'm trying to do is to improve myself, to get to know things, to accomplish, and so on. Please help me to do that. That's all I'm asking for. So in all of these endeavors, the me is not disturbable. Even when you're reading a book, for example, you know what will happen? And this is what does happen. You will be impressed by certain aspects of it. Oh, this is wow, wonderful. I didn't know this. This is great. Then you will say, yeah, but this is not a complete answer. This is not given in the other page. The other pages are a different one. And I hope that the author had given, you start to criticize. Well, not criticize, but you start to doubt. And then you can always put the book aside and say, not now. In all of those endeavors, you are the me. And you are dictating exactly what you're doing and so on and so forth. So you could be asking, so what's wrong with that? How come that's not effective? You know what? Shall I tell you why that is not effective? In this vidya, in this knowledge, in this pursuit of the truth about myself, the me has to be dissolved. The me has to be dissolved? What do you mean? How is that possible? Yep, that is exactly what needs to happen. Why? Because the me will get you up to a certain point. Beyond that point, the me itself needs to be eliminated. And that process of dissolving and elimination of the me as a human being status is not possible without a guru. Doesn't happen. It'll never happen. Never happened in the past, and may I please suggest do not try it because you're wasting your time, as I said before. Well, how do you... It may not happen even with a guru. With the help of a guru, it may not even happen. We're not guaranteeing it. But it certainly will not happen without a guru. So many examples are given. It is very much like you are stuck in a marshland. This is what I hear about some of these marshy areas in Florida, where there's just mud, and you cannot pull yourself out in the middle of the mud. Someone outside has to pull you out. You cannot do it yourself because you're stuck in it. Another classical example is that of a dream. In the dream, you cannot will yourself out of the dream. The whole dream has to be ended. Something has to happen, an alarm clock, or somebody waking you up, or some frightening sound, or some memory, or something outside of the dream, which will dissolve the very dreaminess of you as a dreamer. That has to happen. There has to be an external. Another example is that you cannot see yourself as you are without a mirror. You need an external mirror, as we have talked about it here. So for all those reasons, going to a teacher is essential, a live teacher. Now, having gone to a live teacher and having gotten a certain level of clarity about the thing, then you can resort to books that support that view. So in my own life, I had not been introduced to Swami Maheshananji while he was still alive. So does it mean that he is not useful to me? No. Why? Because I'm very indebted to Swami Chimananji and Swami Dayananji in giving me a very clear picture of what my life is all about, where am I going, what are the mistakes that I'm making, what do I need to do, and dissolving my meanness to a large extent, and at least making it clear that I need to remove my meanness. I may not be completely there, but it is very clear to me that that's what I need to be working on. That part all was done by a guru. Then, when I discovered the writings of Swami Maheshananji, they become very clear, as though he's like a living guru. I've never really heard him. I believe there are some recordings of his voice. I don't even want to go there, because his books talk to me. His ideas, his translation. So then the text can become useful, but the initial introduction of the lack of meanness has to be done by a guru. This is what is said. That's why it signifies all these Upanishads are dialogues, and here Ashvalayana had to go through Parameshti and say, "Sir, I need your help." And here the attitude also is important, because what happens is that in something like this, as we have discussed it before, I won't spend much time on this. This is not just academic. There has to be a closeness between the teacher and the student, a shraddha, a trust, a tuning up, loyalty, emotional bond, whatever you may call it. It's very important, because you need to have a certain respect for the wisdom of the teacher, and the teacher needs to have respect on your willingness to do sadhana chatushtaya. You may not have all the qualities yet, but your willingness to improve those qualities is very important for me. They say, in fact, it is written in our Shastra, please do not teach Vedanta to someone that you can see doesn't deserve. Don't even try it. In fact, don't do it. Conversely, if you see someone with some openness and some need, you must teach that person. Avoid teaching to these people, must teach these people. I know in the beginning, when I started teaching, I had some ideas about who I would allow a person to come into a new class and who I wouldn't. No, not to a new class, but to any class. And I had some fixed ideas. I thought that I cannot teach a person unless he or she starts at the very beginning of a class. So I've already given 10, 12 classes. Then I felt that the person should not join. I've given that up. First of all, it is not possible to have people like that because people come when they are ready, when they want to do it. Secondly, they still get a lot, even if it's not from the beginning. Then the next time a class starts, then they will start from the very beginning. So if a person approaches me now, I never say no. I used to at one time. I'll say, why don't you wait until we start anew? No, I say, please come. So that attitude of the Guru Shishya is very important as part of this. And here on page 43 of this book, you have it, you can turn to that. The Vedanta says at the very bottom of this page, Yasya Deve, this is from Shvetashvatara Upanishad 623. Yasya Deve Parabhaktihi Yatha Deve Tatha Gurau Tasyaite Kathita Hi Arthaha Prakashante Mahatmana. Very famous, very often quoted one. So this summarizes the attitude on the part of the student, and it says, just like you have parabhakti towards Deva. Here the Deva can be either Parameshvara or it could be a secondary Deva like Ganesha, Krishna, Saraswati. But you have a certain bhakti towards it, you have a certain shraddha towards it. Certainly towards Parameshvara, towards God. That same bhakti, if you had towards a Guru, Yasya Deve Parabhakti Yatha Deve Tatha Gurau. Gurau is the seventh case of Guru, in Guru. Then what happens? Tasya ete katitha hi arthaha prakashante mahatmana. If you have that attitude of bhakti, of your devotion, if you have this similar kind of a devotion towards a guru as it is to God, your job is done. Because the words of the guru, see, this is the other interesting thing. In our life, how are we going to see the presence of God? How? Is it that one day I will see God sitting in the room? Is it some Akashvani that will come in from the top, which will say, "Oh, I am God, you have been calling me, and I am here, please listen to me"? Is it some kind of a form that will come? How is that going to happen? Is that realistic? So what happens is that God is present right now in my life in various forms. If you are married, God is present in terms of your spouse. And if the spouse criticizes you, it is God talking. How is the God going to come and criticize you? You say a lot of things, but you don't fulfill it. Why don't you fulfill it? How is that going to happen? So your spouse does the job for you. Your spouse says, "No, didn't you say you were going to do this?" You said, "Yeah, don't bug me, okay? I said that." "Yeah, but why don't you fulfill it? Only promise things that you should be doing it." And you don't like to be criticized, especially by your spouse, because you come up with your ideas. "Oh, do you know what you do?" All kinds of stuff and so on. All impervious to criticism. God talking. Somebody comes up and says, I need some money. Can you please give me a couple of dollars? And you say, all these homeless people, yes, it's ridiculous, I don't understand, this, that, or the other. God coming in, asking for a couple of dollars. So similarly, if there is a guru that comes in and says, by the way, there's some very interesting things that you should know about. And if you know about it, you will be totally free. God coming through the guru. How else is he going to come? How is he going to come? So this is an important number 43 on page 43 was Yasya deve parabhakti yatha deve tatha gurau tasya ete katitha hi arthaha prakashante mahatmana. He says that if you have this kind of an attitude, there is no reason whatsoever where this will not be clearly clarified for you. So this is the blessing of Ishvara, blessing of Shastra, blessing of the Guru. So these are the four kinds of blessings that we must have. We must have the blessings of the Ishvara. Ishvara's blessings are always there. They just need to be discovered. Second one is the blessing of the Shastra. It's available. We just have to tap it. Third is the blessing of the Guru. The ability to teach the Shastra is the blessing of the Guru. The fourth one is the most important one, which is your own mind. It must have your blessing of your mind. You must know this makes sense and this is what I want to do. And have the right attitude about people, about the society, about myself, forgiveness to myself, forgiveness to others, tolerance, all those kinds of things. This is the manaha. All those are necessary. That is what maturity is all about. So that's the attitude, etc. Next thing we will do is this word varishtam. So this I should have the verse in front of me always. I will try to do that. So atha So if you look at, so all these words are important in the verse. So atha. So if I were to ask you, I should really give you some quizzes so that you are with me. What does the word atha means? In fact, let me just do a verbal quiz. The very first subword portion of the word is atha. Let me ask you, and I'll be silent for a second, for a few seconds. What does atha mean? Think about it. Atha means after gaining eligibility. Then Ashvalayana. Is it Ashvalayana or Ashvalayana? I'm not sure. Let me see. I'm uncertain about if I'm pronouncing. Ashvalayana. This is page 32. Ashvalayana. So the student Parameshtinam upasametya, having approached Adhihi Bhagavo Brahma Vidyam, please teach me Brahma Vidyam. And there are two words used, Varishtham and Nigudham. Sada Sadbhihi Sevyamananam. So let's just do that. Sada Sadbhihi Sevyamananam means the one which is resorted to by all wise people. Because you always want to learn what the wise people resort to. What are people really doing which is really grateful? Because we all learn from others. So he says, Sada Sadbhihi Sevyamananam. Sadbhi means good, wise people, who is resorted to. Two words are used, Varishtham, Nigudham. So let's look at both of those. So, Varishtham. The most worthy, the most exalted out of all knowledges is Brahma Vidya. Why? Is it just sort of like just an idle praise? Oh, you are the best. We don't really mean you are the best, but you're pretty good. But when you hear it says Varishtham, this is superlative, and this is Vedanta talking, so it's not idle. There's no agenda, this is Varishtham. The most important and the most exalted knowledge. Why? Because all other knowledges have limited usefulness. Any other knowledge, any knowledge is useful. The knowledge that this is a day, the knowledge that this is a time, knowledge that I am hungry, all knowledge that I need to eat, that I need to go to the grocery store. Knowledge, 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 knowledge. Knowledge of languages, knowledge of certain subject matter. Everything is knowledge. So they all have usefulness, but they all have limited values. Because if I am hungry, then it is good for eating, but not for learning something. Learning means that I learned some languages, but it's not good for filling my tummy. They all have limitations. Every knowledge has limitations, except for Brahma Vidya. Why? Because in short, all other knowledges are that of limited objects. This is the knowledge of the unlimited object. And so other knowledges have limitations. We saw this in the Brahma Sutra class, for those of you that attended that in the morning. We can bring that example very shortly for others also. So there the contention was from people who do not think that Vedanta is the complete answer, that knowledge is also limited. It doesn't give you the fruits until you execute it. This is what they say. So, for example, the knowledge of a recipe of a food, some preparation, that's important. As you say, ingredients. Buy so much tofu, then put some turmeric, etc., and then you mix them. So these ingredients are important. But you cannot fulfill your hunger until you cook it. So the knowledge of a recipe is not that important. It is important, but not, I shouldn't say not that important, it is incomplete. The completeness only comes with doing something. This is what was the contention. So here, what was said was that that is generally true, but if there is an ignorance of something which is preventing you from seeing the truth about yourself, there the removal of ignorance and the acquisition of knowledge is itself sufficient. You don't need to do anything. So, if you happen to be unlimited, infinite, complete, and your feeling is that I am not that person. See, look at this carefully. If the truth about yourself is that you are fundamentally unlimited, but if your notion is that I am not, then the correction of the notion itself will give you infinity. You don't have to become infinity. In fact, you cannot become infinity. As I think if you read this chapter now, you will see this in much more detail. I'm just giving you the gist of it. Infinity cannot be attained. It cannot be reached. You can attain and reach a very large number, but not infinity. And my life is not complete until I have infinity, not just a large number. This is very true in our experience. I remember that when I came to this country in United States in 1964, to do my master's. Our biggest issue was we didn't have adequate funds. I mean, it was such a struggle because my family could not afford, they could hardly give me some money just to come here. This is true for many of us. Certainly in my family, my father was not rich enough to really give me any amount of money. I could only go up to get his airfare. And after, I think I was given another $200-300 in my pocket. After that, I was on my own. And when I went to UC Berkeley as a graduate student, I had to get a teaching assistantship. Money was so important. I remember I used to get, I think $200 was it, a teaching assistant, as a teacher assistant. And my apartment was $75. And so we used to really look at food very carefully and save some money. So at that time, $100, $200,000 was a lot of money. And if somebody had said, what if you become $100,000? We said, no. That is not possible. That's not possible. If I have $100,000, I'm done. That's not the case. You get $100,000, then you start looking for the next $100,000. So having a large idea about who I am, I'm just looking at the time. Nobody is satisfied. No one is satisfied. You may have any amount of wealth, but you still want more. So really, infinity cannot be reached. You can reach a large number, but not infinity. So the only possibility is, there are two possibilities. Either you are not infinite. So as a jiva, you will never be infinite. As we were saying earlier, as a human being, you'll never be infinite. You have to give up your humanness in order to become infinite. Excuse me. You have to give that up. And then you find that it's not that I can never be infinite, I am already infinite. This is the discovery. I am praptasya prapti, I'm already there, I just don't know it. So that for that reason, this vidya is the most exalted. So when we say varishtam, we mean it because we have to understand why. So that is called varishtam. Here, I think Swami Viditatmananda had pointed this out, that Swami, our teacher, Sri Swami Dayanandji used to say that the human beings are always searching for the infallible. And so infallible here means the infinite, because only that is unlimited. Infallible means unlimited, which is always true. So we are always searching for that. We are always looking for some support that I can rely on. But we never find it. Swami Maheshananji says, in our whole life, this is exactly what the search goes on. You are growing up and you don't know. In fact, this is why the teenage is a very vulnerable stage. Up to teenage, up to 11, 12, you don't understand your limitations, and you are not upset with your limitations, largely. You can, everybody is competitive and so on, but you accept yourself and it's all fun and games and so on. Now when you become a teenager, why that becomes a kind of a dicey stage is, you don't know what your identity is. And remember, we can all relate to it. I can too. How will I see myself as a successful person? Should I be a funny person that people will laugh with? Should I be a very strong person that people have different ideas about what they can or cannot be? That sense of identity is not there. And you struggle with it. You don't know what you want to be. Then somehow or the other you make compromises, whatever it is, you grow older and you become a sort of like a semi-adult, 19, 20, 21 and so on. And you feel, all is not well with me. I really need to educate myself and become a highly skilled person. So you do that. You say, no, still not well with me. I think I want to get married because I feel that I need some companionship. So marriage is the answer. So you get married and you soon discover this isn't what it was supposed to be. It has not given me as much sense of satisfaction. In fact, the other person wants more from me, and I want more from that person. And we are both interdependent. So then you feel, if we have children, then we'll have something to look forward to. You have children. Children give more problems than successes. Life is a complete request for infallibility. You never get it. In all of this, in fact, this is the word nigudham. Now we can go into this word nigudham. Nigudham means nitaram gudham or nishchaya gudham. Gudham means secret. Nigudham means maha-secret. It's an absolute impossible for you to suspect. This is how secret it is. What is so secret about it? In my search for infallibility, in my search for trust, of finding something that I can rely on, I can never suspect that is me. Can never suspect it. And even when I'm told, I don't accept it. What? You mean the person that I want, that I'm searching for is me? How is that possible? So this is the nigudham. It is the ultimate secret. Why? Because in my search for infallibility, I have already concluded that I am fallible. I cannot be complete. I am not complete. So this is the reason for the word nigudham. And here Swami Viditatmananda, I made a note of this on page 50. At the very bottom of page 50 he says, then someone might think that if this is the ultimate secret, then either no one knows it, or it is unknowable, or perhaps only a few privileged ones can know it. But he says no. Sada sadbhihi sevyamanana. Beautiful. He says it is pursued and known also constantly by the noble ones, by the learned ones, by those who have gained the purity of the mind. By them Brahman is always known. The knowers of Brahman behold it in their own heart as their own self. This is the reason for the word Nigudham. Then there is a section, equally beautiful. All these are really very, very well done. Why should I gain this knowledge? What's so great about it? Now, we've been talking about it, about infinity and so on and so forth. But why is it valuable to me? This is a very beautiful section on page 52. Very, very important section. If you look at it, basically at the very top, basically we are very interested in ourselves. As Swami Dayananji says, ultimately the only interest I have is to be a pleased self. I always look at myself as am I pleased or not? And I do things to achieve a pleased state. And he says that really a human being does not want God for the sake of God, does not want Vedanta for the sake of Vedanta. He doesn't want anything for the sake of that thing. All he or she wants is the pleased self. And so here we'll end with this, that Swami Dayananji used to, this is a very famous statement of his. The human being is the problem and the human being is the solution. The human being does not know that he doesn't need anything. And that fact is pointed out in a manner that becomes clear to me. Here this example, very beautiful example given is, it's kind of like a very rich person, millionaire, billionaire, who's got all the wealth at the disposal, but he proceeds to get inebriated. He has one drink, he has a weakness perhaps. He has one drink, he should have just stopped at that. He had 2 drinks, he had 3 drinks, and pretty soon he loses his self-identity. And this example is given that you are in some kind of a bar. You're in some kind of a bar where the outside is all dirty and there's open sewers and so on, and you stumble out and you fall down in the middle of mud and muck, and your identity is not clear to you, and you're asking people, can please somebody help me? And everybody says, oh, these homeless people, they're always asking. No one comes to your help. And you're just in a sad state. And what needs to happen is that the effect of the alcohol has to go. And if somebody lifts you up and puts it up on a chair or something and he says, just sober up, have some cups of coffee or so on. You look like you've got a nice clothes on and so on. You're going to be okay. Just don't Don't overdo this. And then when you regain, you're saying, oh my God, how could I have done this? So there the example is that you already knew you were rich at one time and then you forgot you were not a beggar. Here, the situation is, I never knew that I am a complete person. But the example is very similar. Same situation is there, that my identity is that of, I belong to the family of Ishvara, but I take myself in the family of human beings. And the inebriation is through to Maya. Whatever it is, my karma phala, I take myself to be a very limited person. Here, Vedanta comes along and he says, wait. Did you say you are a limited person? He says, yep. No. Don't you see? Whereof the effects of the Maya. And here's how you do it. You will see that you were always an infinite person. You're not becoming one. You just didn't know it. So that's what's given in this. Why should I gain this knowledge? So I will close this class, and I would ask you to kind of read the section all the way on this approaching the teacher. By I think we have pretty much covered all of that. Approaching the teacher on page 32. Please read up to middle of page 52. Before what is evil and how does knowledge destroy the evil, which is the second part of the first verse. Right? So we have now covered Adhihi Bhagavo Brahma Vidyam Varishtam Sada Sadbhihi Sevyamananam Nigudham. Up to that we have now covered. And if you can kindly read the section up to page 52. And next time we will go to this last part of the verse. Yaya achirat sarva papam vibhohya parat param purusham yati vidwan. So that we will do in the next class. So your homework kindly is to go from page 32 to page 52. And if you could do that, I think this will be a good way to consolidate what we have been talking about. So with that, I close the class with a prayer and see if you have any questions. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. All right. Good to see you all. There's so many of you that also attend the morning session, Zoom sessions, so that it's been a long way. You appreciate your time on this. Wonderful. Kamala, good that you have the Vasudeva Kutumbakam talk on the temple web page, and that it's has conveys something. So I'm very happy about that. Good. Shanti Kumar, it must be very late for you. Wow, I don't understand. It's almost like 1 o'clock at night time, I think, in India. Anyway, very happy to have you all. I don't see any other questions, so we will see you next week.